Welcome to the Mike and Doug Show. I'm Doug. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Doug.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Since last time I talked to you, I looked into the Coots and Company, the bank that the Queen keeps her money.
Oh, yeah, the
You
Coots
have to have a
Bank. We
million
go way back.
dollars. You have to have $1 million to get in. You're, if you have an account there, it's $1,000 a year. But they say that they serve everyone from the monarchy to cowherds. Now, what cowherd? Right on their site, it says this. What cowherd has $1 million to put into the bank and investment? Plus, they're the investors, and they literally brag on their website that they were the money behind the American Revolution,
They do? I
the
haven't seen
French,
that.
the French Revolution, and the development of Far East trade into India and China. It's like, oh, you mean the British East India Company, the war you started called the American Revolution, and then you didn't mention 1812 and the Civil War, but we know you had to be there too, Mr. Coots, who there is no Mr. Coots anymore. Anyway, it goes back to the 1600s, and it's always been the bank, the personal bank of the Queen, the King. Now, I just want to point something out. We have before said that the Bank of England is her bank. Well, it is. It's the central bank. She's in charge of the country, and the exchequer's in charge, and the treasurer of the bank is one and the same. And you don't get to know what they're doing, and you can't see anything. And does she have money in there? Of course they do.
So she's the one that the Coots Bank is the one that's borrowing infinite amount of cash from the Bank of England.
Precisely. They're the ones doing the dirty deals, obviously, because right in it, it says that they serve the Channel Islands. Now, anyone knows when you say Channel Islands, that means offshore accounts, right?
Right.
We can name
Isle of
them. It
Man,
doesn't matter.
Guernsey,
Thank
Isle
you.
of Man mainly.
Yeah, and Guernsey and others. So what they're saying there, when you say Channel Islands, that just means, yeah, we will launder all your money. And they say that they started the first computerized banking in 1963 for their customers. Why? To shift their money digitally to the offshore accounts. There was no other way to do it. Of course, they had to be the first ones who could do that. Their
Right.
money in the offshore accounts are nothing but digits.
So are you off track, Douglas? Why are you talking about Coots?
Because the self-proclaimed and obvious new king of the Republican Party, Ron DeSantis' sister at age 30, died in London under suspicious circumstances with an auditor of
Coots.
No,
Oh,
who was an auditor of Coots.
she was a KPMG auditor
Thank you.
of a specific account, which is really interesting because they call them covered accounts. So she was auditing all of the shady banking that was going on, where banks were trading on their own, using cash that they borrowed on their own deals.
Those kind of companies, those auditors, we have blamed right in the same package with insurance companies and bankers and brokers because they're all so corrupt. And without the fake audits, they couldn't do what they do in
Those are
fractional
called
banking.
covered accounts.
Yeah.
And
So
she was specifically working for KPMG Volcker. Now we know about Volcker because he used to be head of he was the head of the Federal Reserve, wasn't he? Yeah.
yeah,
And he was a vice president on record. We have the tax returns of the Pilgrim Society with Henry Kissinger as late as 2009.
but I digress into the weeds really bad this time. But so I'm so noted
Okay, so
for
what are we talking about? What's the big picture here?
Well, the big picture is, first off, we're going to get me out of the weeds. But I had to say that because when you said what you said to me about his sister, I went, because we're talking about DeSantis today and who he is, the self-proclaimed king of America. He's obviously going to be, Trump will be out and he'll be in. Or he'll be Trump's vice president and Trump will get off and he'll be the president. One way or the other, he's just like Pompeo. They both speak the same way. They're both weak little British lapdogs. And what do? They simply say what is necessary to get the job. So what is DeSantis doing? To give the biggest corporate tax breaks in Florida's history, $4 or $5 billion, and then they all those corporations give him money. And that's why he has the largest coffers right now, $119 million for his campaign, double what he took to win against Andrew Gillum when he ran for governor before. But at the last minute, the FBI came in and found that Andrew Gillum was doing all this bad stuff in Tallahassee, and so can't have this African American being the governor of Florida. And you saw one of the biggest smear campaigns directly from the FBI's office. That tells me Ron DeSantis is as corrupt as he could possibly be. His sister dying under circumstances concerning the most secret bank in the world, which probably, if the rumors are true, may have the greatest amount of assets. They don't tell you how many assets they have. And they may be really the bank of this secret organization that Prince Charles runs, which some call the Club of the Isle. And so if you got $1 million, you might be able to get in if you're directly connected to royalty, because these are the insider traders who know what the Queen is going to do with the whole country, with the entire United Kingdom. And they have what? Insider trading information. So if you're part of that,
let's put this in context. She died in 2015. Ron DeSantis was a congressman then. She died in London. She presumably was visiting her British fiance, who worked at Coutts Bank, and she was handling covered accounts for KPMG in London, which has got to be the epicenter of dirty dealing when you're talking about banks. And then suddenly she dies. There's no information. We just checked. We couldn't find any news about her death. Now, wouldn't you think that would be news since she's the sister of a sitting U.S. congressman? But there's no information.
Matter of fact, I tell you, it would be rude for you to ask.
Oh.
Yeah, the articles I read. Shame on you for asking.
Okay.
So we're talking about Ron DeSantis. Why? Because some red-haired lady went out on the channels and the internet and did a show, and she got everybody all stirred up. And she somehow twisted you and the miners into doing this research on Ron DeSantis, which I don't know. From the get-go, I never trusted the guy. Okay, there's nothing about him I ever trusted for 1 second, and I knew immediately he was going to be Trump's replacement by the globalist.
Well, you're a better man than me, because I had no opinion of him, and everything I knew was sort of soft and cuddly, and he's got that great family, and they show a lot of pictures of him. But another telltale sign of somebody being corrupt is how many pictures of them are there out on Wikipedia. And his pictures go on page after page after page. Plus, he's got a huge Wikipedia without any experience to justify it. But one of the things that's really bugging me, and I'm really getting sick of this, is the fact that the ethical disclosures that our public figures are supposed to make are just eye candy. They're all producing these disclosures where they leave out stuff that they don't want the public to know, and that information that the public needs to know is then just buried, and the press goes along with it. Nobody asks, nobody digs. Now, I would say that one of the things we've just discovered today is there is a genealogist who did a really good job of digging into the genealogy of the DeSantises. But the curious thing is, this person, while they touched on the idea that Yale and Harvard were elite schools, they really didn't dig into the details of that or ask a lot of the questions that our researchers did, and discovered all these secret societies that he was involved in. But one of the things in the fix for our system of government has got to be a true fifth column, where a independent media and curious journalists start digging into these people. Otherwise, they're going to get away with murder, literally. And clearly, it's sure suspicious that we see an Arkansas here of his sister in London, when she is an auditor specifically on these shady accounts that KPMG audits all over the world. And we've seen just recent videos where the Queen is participating with various video conferences in promoting KPMG's 150th anniversary. And we have no investigative journalists right now. And that's really
let me just say,
sad state.
that if I were a novelist or Dan Brown, I might see it a different way. I might see that this congressman needed to have his little neck yanked by his controllers. And so the sister happened to be in London. She's already mixed up with a financier, British Coots banker. And we just heard how that's associated with it. She's at KPMG. And they take her out and say, Ron, do it again. And we're going to go for your family.
I like what you said earlier, Betsy. She simply asked a question about the Queen's money, and in England, that means they kill you.
Yes. She said, who's this?
Sorry,
Yeah, she was a naive American.
It's against the law to ask a question about the Queen's finances, folks. That's why I have studied banks. You all know it. How many articles have I written on the history of banking? And I had never heard of Coots.
Really?
How is that possible? Or Middleton or Palmer, or then it was Coots, and it had a few names, but still after Coots, I mean, this goes back to the late 1600s, okay? This has been around, one of the oldest banks in the world, especially.
Yeah, it is.
And they brag that they're the bankers for wars.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, that's right.
Has anyone ever looked into them? No. Queen has her money there. And they're also the biggest advisors, asset managers and advisors in the world. Well, of course they would be. The Queen owns Rio Tinto. The Queen owns most of the uranium in the world. The Queen owns most of the zinc in the world. The Queen owns, and people say, no, it doesn't. Yes, we've proven it time and time and time again, just like Lockheed Martin, we think is an American company. No golden share is held by the Queen. And how does she rule? By not nodding her head no.
Right.
They report
That's the
to
golden
her,
share.
and that's it. If she says no, they can't do it. If she doesn't
Correct.
nod her. But here's the other thing. Just a minute ago, I went through and looked at the opening of Coots Bank when it it started off a long time ago on what do they call it, the Strand, and then it moved down the street, so it's been remodeled twice. Well, the Queen was there for the opening, I think, of two of the new remodelings. And when you look at her picture, you say, oh, my Lord, that's not the same lady they have parading as the Queen now. Has anybody over there taken a series of pictures and shown through facial recognition it's not the same person? Today, I found at least 2 or 3 different lookalikes. It's not the Queen. So why don't they get rid of the Queen? Because Prince Charles is a complete nutcase. And every time that she doesn't rein him in, he starts trying to run Britain as if he owns it. Well, guess what? The British monarchy does own England, and you owe her your allegiance.
He has much admitted that in a World Economic Forum comment.
Totally.
Recently.
And what do we have? We have that beautiful picture of one of the Lord Baron, every type of award you can get, OBE, Knight of the this and Knight of the that, going like this to Prince Charles. Here's a Rothschild saying, you'll do what I tell you to do.
Right.
Yeah, that's what you got. Now tell us.
That's Evelyn Rothschild. That's the picture we're referring to.
Who is still the Queen's advisor.
Right.
And is still probably the most powerful man economically in the world. So Ron DeSantis, he has come out and he's in the news every day, every other day. And everything he says is he's the only governor in America that's standing up for any rational thinking. No masks, no shots for children. Come down here. It's all going to be tax-free. Corporations, people, your income tax, everything. Come on down. I'm as corrupt as anybody can possibly be. I'm in the pocket of you if you put the money in my pocket. It's so obvious. And then his FBI attack on Andrew Gillum, that was the closer for me. And then, my favorite, he said that he thoroughly researched the election with Trump's last election, and there was not a speck of fraud in all of Florida. And he certified it. Why? Oh, Stacey Abrams? How about those videos we have of all the corruption? And you're telling us that you really looked at it? No, here's what I'm telling you. He's the Pilgrim Society's next chosen boy, just like Pompeo might have been, but I think you and Betsy blasted the heck out of him, and I don't think he has a chance now. Everybody looks at him as just a doughboy, but he was in the Queen's pocket, and now we know for a fact because of St. Elmo's Hall, and you're going to tell us about the secret society at Yale. is to me, again, another absolute proof in the pudding. So tell us what you found out with your researchers and the miners about the dirt on Ron DeSantis.
Well, we were looking through just what's out there on the internet, and we ran across a reference to him being a member of this St. Elmo Hall secret society. So we went out to look at what was out there, and we discovered that we didn't find it on Wikipedia. His name was not on there. So some of our people started looking at the Wayback Machine, archive.org, and discovered that over the last 2 years, he had been listed as a member of St. Elmo Hall. But then, wouldn't you know it, just 3 days ago, his name disappeared from that list. So the current Wikipedia will not have, if you type St. Elmo Hall, you will not find it.
That's unbelievable. Oh, excuse me. How many times has that happened in your research that after
Oh,
you did an
that's
article, within days, the Wikipedia changed to hide the most
well,
damnable
in this
facts?
in this case, it happened while the research was being done before we had said anything about it. So that obviously is red meat to a dog to honest researchers. And so we started asking what the St. Elmo Hall is. We'd never heard of it. And it's associated with a fraternity by the symbol of Delta Phi. And even in the Wikipedia, it says it started in 1898. No, 1889. 1889. And so, in doing some digging, we discovered that indeed it had started in 1889, and it was sort of this um, subsidiary version of the Delta Phi fraternity, which started in like 1830s, and it was specifically formed to create an association with the Knights of Malta. Now, before we ever studied the Knights of Malta, I wouldn't have thought anything about that. But now that we have the data and have the research, we realized, oh my gosh, do we have a tiger by the tail here? Because now we've gone into the research at AFI and pulled out all the documents and realized that 1889 was a seminal year in the New World Order creation of the new British Empire. And by that, I mean there were a number of things happening right then in 1889. They were all related to the Rothschilds and Cecil Rhodes, who was a business partner of Lord Rothschild. That would have been Lord Walter Rothschild. And in that same year, Rothschild and Rhodes created De Beers. They assisted Queen Victoria in starting something called the Knights of Malta English Priory, which essentially created a new secret society that would not be controlled by the Pope, but would be controlled by the Queen. And it was an honorary society. And Andrew Carnegie was likely an early knight of the Knights of Malta, just like John Roberts, our Chief Justice, is today. So in 1889, they created this secret society where they could give out knighthoods without going through the normal approval process that they do for regular British knights. What else happened that day? Oh, in that same year, the Queen, by charter, started the British South Africa Company. Now, this is huge because we can see that the British South Africa Company was the first corporate player in the New World Order that would be run by corporations and not governments. And it was a big experiment. They put Cecil Rhodes in charge of it. They made him a privy councillor a few years later. In 1889, Lord Rosebery was a part of that, and he had inherited the N.M. Rothschild fortune. Baron Henry de Worms, Lord Pirbright, was the Minister of Trade at that time. He actually, in 1889, became a privy councillor, and just go on and on. That I think the world stopped rotating that year. And wouldn't you see this, that the St. Elmo Hall was created immediately, fabricated immediately at the same time that all this was happening? Because we now know that Yale, Columbia, and Harvard were thick as thieves with Oxford and Cambridge. And so what we have, and besides going to Yale, DeSantis then went to Harvard, so he got well schooled in this Anglo-American um, British alliance that he then has continued to carry on to this day. I think that there can be no other conclusion to this. Now, when we saw this other genealogy that was created about him, the genealogy kind of touched on these issues but didn't go into any detail. So if you take that genealogy and what we have and our researchers have put together, you see a much more complete picture of how thoroughly this young Ron DeSantis has been schooled in the dark arts, and how he then moved immediately. He went from there, he went into the Navy, worked with the Judge Advocate General in the Navy. In other words, he's never been anything but an attorney, so he has no real life experience. And then he then became a congressman, and then he became governor. It all happened too quick. I think they screwed the pooch on his story because it's so obvious that it happened too quick that it shows that he is a kept man. And then when we discover today that his sister worked for KPMG in the shady covered accounts section of KPMG, named after a pilgrim by the name of Paul Volcker, we then see a more complete picture that it's quite likely that she was taken out probably to let DeSantis know who was pulling his chain.
I want to dwell on the legacy of Cecil Rhodes' scholarship, the Rhodes Scholarship,
Right.
Rhodes Scholars, because they decided, as you just pointed out, when they became the rulers of all diamonds and the diamond market in the earth, the ruler of all gold in the gold market in the earth, and subsequently silver, because then the Rothschilds then controlled setting the daily rate, the spot price for silver, gold, and later the LIBOR rate, the rate that where banks loan each other money. In other words, they controlled the whole thing. So since the time of Cecil Rhodes, I think I was getting a nice picture when you were talking. I got the image that, yeah, well, when you're as rich as you can possibly be, you need to make a plan of how you're going to spend it in the future. And that's what the billionaires tell us in these days. They say, oh, I have so much money, I have to extend my life so I'll be around long enough to spend it all. And as they always say, and get rid of all these people around here, too many people. So that's what I think Cecil Rhodes and his group, later with Milner and his group, and the entire foreign policy of Britain, the United Kingdom, America, the Anglo Alliance is in fact simply the delusions of grandeur of what happens when you become the richest people on the earth. And remember,
Right.
Cecil Rhodes also had the complete support of the monarchy
Well,
and the church.
I need to point out that this is a fact. We know Cecil Rhodes was gay. Lord Rosebery was probably bisexual. W.T. Stead was likely gay. And so what
And a
we
sex
see,
maniac, by the way.
yeah, definitely. So what we see among these people and their feeder groups at Oxford and Cambridge is a definite gay agenda. There's no way that you can avoid talking about that. So here in this scenario you just talked about, probably explains why now they've finally, after 100 and some years, come out of the closet and they don't even hide the fact that they're all gay.
Well, you got to remember that these men, some of the richest people in the world and in all of history, didn't have any children. So they
Right.
created a scholarship fund so that they could adopt some nice guys, some nice young men to do their bidding so they could brainwash them and they could groom them for the Pilgrim Society so they could continue to spend the stolen money and keep the secret away from everyone. And that's what still goes on to this day. Now let's talk about the 8 secret societies at Yale.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Skull and Bones. What is Skull and Bones? It's the flag you fly when you're a pirate. What did St. Elmo's group fly? a Viking boat, in other words, a marauder, with a flag of a sea goat, Capricorn, the sign of Capricorn, and St. Elmo's fire on the top of the mast, right? What is that? What are they saying? We are pirates. And what does Skull and Bones say? We're the worst of pirates. We're
Mhm.
coming after you. We're going to kill you and take everything you have. And it's what we do for sport. And the other secret societies look into them, and you'll find the same deprivation of humanity that basically gets into a small group that says, we're going to take over the world. And
Yeah,
me and
they're
my
really
buddies,
obsessed.
yeah,
They're
me and my
really obsessed
buddies,
with death.
oh, and that too.
They all had tombs. All those eight agents had tombs where they met, and it was all they 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 dedicated themselves to secrecy, and that was consistent with what Cecil Rhodes then later defined as a key criteria for the Pilgrim Society was they had to practice Jesuit secrecy. And so by 1889, they were getting ready to form the Pilgrim Society, which happened in 1902, which they did pretty quickly after Cecil Rhodes died. They didn't expect him to die. He was only in his early 60s. So they moved things forward when that happened. But here we have Yale fitting right in, and we have St. Elmo Hall being built, which you can see pictures of. And we see many members of the coming Pilgrim Society who were also members of St. Elmo Hall, including the Bushes, and also its sister secret society, the Skull and Bones, which more people are familiar with.
But
We never heard of it.
Skull and Bones is at Harvard and St. Elmo Hall at Yale, or
Yale.
there, or is
Skull and Bones is also at Yale.
okay. But here's the thing: if you're a member of one of these secret societies, you certainly know the history of the society and what you just described, the historical beginnings of St. Elmo Hall. It didn't just change the history midstream and become good doers. They've
Right.
always been this. So DeSantis full well knew the kind of club he was in, but yet he continued. Just like when he was on the ship with that Giamonatas, whatever, an Italian. And let's talk about his Italian background.
First, I want to go a little deeper into this. Okay, you're a member of the Skull and Bones or of St. Elmo's. Well, guess what? No one's ever told what the secret is. And it was you swore upon an oath of death. And you swore to look after your brothers in the fraternity, right? What was the secret? I'm going to tell you the secret. So get ready.
By the way, there were not many of them. They only had like 8 or 10 new members a year. This was not a big group.
At the top, there were very few. And they wanted to be the top. And they were competing against the other secret societies for what? Total and full world hegemony, right? They wanted to take over the world. It's just like, these cartoons. What are you going to do today? Take over the world. Try to take over the world. That's, of course, what I want to do. So imagine this. Imagine this. Think this through. Have you ever heard anyone who turned and told the secrets of the Skull and Bone oath that they took?
Mm.
You never even heard of St. Elmo's. I'd never even heard of St. You said, when you said that, I went, come on, you got to be kidding. You mean Tickle Me Elmo? You mean the little red doll? What? St. Elmo's? You mean that what we call chemical ether at the top of a mast of a boat? And so St. Elmo is saying, we need the prayer. We need St. Elmo to bless us being pirates on the economic sea.
St. Elmo was the patron saint of mariners. And he's also the patron saint of Malta. And there's a big fortress on Malta called St. Elmo Fortress. And that was a site of a big battle with the Ottoman Empire between the Knights Templar and the Ottomans.
Did you say it was in a 5-pointed star shape?
Mm-hmm.
You mean a pentagram? You mean
a
magical black
Don't
magic?
quote me on that. It was either 4 points or 5 points. I can't remember.
4 wouldn't make sense. That would be normal. 5 makes sense. And why do I say that? I say it because remember who the Knights of Malta through the Vatican are. They're the ones who took over for the Hospitallers, and they took over the wealth of the Templars. And to this very day, if you're in the insider trading group with the black nobility, and the richest people who were invited into the Vatican's Knights of Malta, and I've seen these invitations, and I helped someone get into the Knights of Malta that was invited after I vetted it. And these are the richest people in the world. It's insider trading, and it used to rule the world. And then Freemasonry, which is the opposite of the papacy, came along, and the Freemasons for a while ruled a lot. But what really rules it all? It's what we're talking about right here. And what is the secret told to every single world leader that is trained and brainwashed at the World Economic Forum? What is the secret that Alfred Milner told everyone? What is the secret that Cecil Rhodes and his group told everyone? It's the same secret. What's the secret of St. Elmo's? What's the secret of Skull and Bones? Here it is. You ready?
Yep.
The British monarchy run it all. Get on board or you're out. And then they tell them how they run it. As we have been telling you, Truth History, this is the Truth History Project. And what we're telling you now is, again, another page in this that shocked the heck out of me, because I know the Queen runs the Bank of England. Everybody knows that. But I did not know about Coots. And I did not know that Coots is probably then, and they brag right on their own website, the most grotesque banksters that are still in existence. So,
well, when you talk about the KPMG Volcker group that his sister was in, and you talk about covered accounts, that's where a bank does deals and creates companies that it funds itself. And she was creating a database that could track these across different banks and holdings. Well, I can imagine they were probably running scared in London that such a database would ever exist. She was probably just trying to be efficient as an American. And her husband probably was freaking out too, so her fiance. So I can see why they would not want this brash American messing with the information base associated with this, because it was all illegal. It was immoral, probably satanic. And so she was left, but probably it had the useful side benefit of telling then Congressman Ron DeSantis, who was running the show. And you're probably right. They told him, here, the Queen's running the show.
Listen, that little secret, I was a postgrad student at the University of Manchester in England, and I happened to be, I was a Rotarian scholar back in the day, and some Rotarian men pulled me aside and they told me just this. They said, look, it's the Brits. The Brits own everything. They run America. You're still a colony. I was shocked. I didn't want to believe that. And of course, here we are today. But here's the thing. That means that Ron DeSantis knew in college that this was the big secret, yet he continued on a career where, as a congressman, he's giving millions, billions of dollars to the British and to Serco and all that I just described in the video before. So this man is fully knowledgeable of the treason he is committing.
Well, we have to remember that he went into the Navy. His entire legal career half of his legal career was in the Navy, but he's still in the Navy. So his legal career never stopped in the Navy. But what we have talked about before is that we have to realize that our Navy is run by the British Admiralty. We don't run our Navy. We never have, which is crazy. So for Ron to be in that long, he had to know these secrets, especially in the legal side. He had to know this. He had to see the kinetic organization develop with the former CIA director Tenet coming on as a director, with Glenn Youngkin, the now governor of Virginia, helping organize this company for Britain. And interesting that they chose the name Kinetic. It's got two Q's in it. So they doubled down on the Q story. And so probably propaganda-wise, they created QAnon and all the rest to divert attention from the fact that they've always used Q as, in fact, isn't that all the James Bond movies even have Q in it?
But
Absolutely.
it's Q to the Q, to take it from that stupid Savin boy, because it's the Queen's kinetic. So that's three Qs.
There you go. It's the Queen.
We'd already put out a broadcasting receiving antenna called the Q, and it started with a Q. before Q came about, and they used our broadcasts for the information that they were turning into riddles and putting into the first Q broadcast. After that, it was taken over by nefarious forces, some of which were led by people who charge money for the interpretations of what Q was talking about. Anyway, let's go. Here we are. Later technologies down in Ohio. Yeah, right. You know them, right? I'm a banker. I'm going to come to you and I'm going to say, you come to me and you say, I want some money because I got the greatest idea. I got the social networking idea, scalability. I'm telling you, this is going to be the big thing. I used to work for AT&T. I got the best thinkers and the best programmers, and this is set up, and I got the whole thing going. I just need some money from you, Mr. Banker. And then I'm going to go and I'm going public with it. I'm getting an IPO. And the banker says, oh, yeah, here's the money. And then the banker, looking at what you had to show the banker of its viability, goes and then is a broker and buys in and buys stock or if he wants to and he's got a customer who is the opposite of what you're doing or the same as what you're doing, he might not give you the loan and give them the loan or steal your idea and give it to them. So a banker who can then put the money into investments through brokerage, through stock markets, that's pure evil, man.
Totally.
There's nothing more evil than that. That's money making money from doing nothing simply because you are clever and you are ruthless and you don't mind watching other people suffer because.
And it's making a joke of the idea that it's making a joke of the whole idea of free enterprise. It's never been free. These guys have been cooking the books the whole time. Now, one of the things I'll add to your story about our fundraising is I saw that early. And so I didn't tell any of these bankers what we were doing while we were handling the invention. But once we had the invention locked in, I started talking to some people, but without giving up the secret sauce. And they were toying with us. They wanted to hear more. We could tell when they wanted to get into the details, and we would never do that. So, and Chandler would egg us on with that kind of stuff, but we never budged on that. And what I can now look back and see is the whole venture capital feeder system is an extremely evil system where these guys have decided with inventors like me, they can't go directly to us because we don't play their game. But what they do is they put out these venture capitalists who supposedly are good at what they do and will bring you along. And so what they'll do, they've developed a very slick way of feeding you a little cash at a time. But with each new tranche of cash, they lock down their control. So that happens most of the time with most entrepreneurs. It didn't happen with us. And that's why we're still out here working to get paid, because we actually protected our intellectual property from these people until they stole everything.
DeSantis, the cultural hero, who has stood up to that evil Mickey Mouse and his probably not married wife, Minnie, and their sexual proclivities. And he says, you shouldn't have gay day at Disney World. And by the way, we're not going to give you your tax break that we gave you when you moved here a long time ago, which was in, I think, perpetuity. But it doesn't matter anyway. We're not, DeSantis alone. I'm not giving you your tax break because I don't like your sexual proclivities and your brainwashing of children. Well, that's a very strong right opinion. Well, what he did with that was made himself completely 100% clearly a pilgrim. Why? He doesn't care about the pornography in Walt Disney. Look at anything of Walt Disney's back to the time when they allowed subliminal programming to come in. Disney was one of the first to start putting sexual innuendos in all of their stuff. And you can find it in almost everything from the early days. And now it's even more sophisticated. You may have to stare at that picture for 10 minutes before you see the sexual part that is being explained there. But it doesn't matter. Subliminally, it goes in. And so here's DeSantis trying to be a cultural hero, a warrior for the morality. Well, you just lied. You took a company and you took away their tax break when you're giving the tax break to everybody else in Florida.
Right.
$4.7 billion, I think, is the amount.
It was a propaganda ploy. But one of the things that we discovered in his background, Uh, Even Wikipedia identifies his mom as Karen Rogers. But as we have now discovered, that wasn't her real family name. Her real family name was Ruggiero, an Italian name with a lot of members of the family in her background. And what we also discovered that from Cleveland, from Youngstown, the Ruggieros were big in the steel business in and around, not as owners, but as workers in the steel business. And that there were a number of mobsters involved with the Ruggiero family. And even some related, Tony Ruggiero was actually um, uh, trying to shake down Disney back in the 60s when they were starting to build Disney World. So what we were confused by was why would they change the name of the family related to Ron DeSantis, and we can clearly see that the ancestry database has tried to wipe that out. I mean, there all of the references that would start identifying his mother and go forward were private, and that's why you always see that. We saw this private with Klaus Schwab, with the Rothschilds. Anybody they don't want us to know about, it's private.
Well, what isn't private is that the mafia had its seat in Youngstown, and that family name of his mother's side is supposedly Sicilian. Now, one can draw your own conclusion from that, but my question would be, how would you not know that if you were Ron DeSantis? And as you've pointed out, there's certain interlocking relationships. Like, why didn't he state that he was part of St. Elmo's Hall?
Right.
If you're part of Skull and Bones, everybody condemns you. Well, he's part of St. Elmo's. He's supposed to say, "Oh, I have taken allegiances beyond my vow to do my
That's
duty
right.
in office." So he's basically, as Tyler has pointed out, treasonous.
Well, here's another level of secrecy that we have to deal with his background and his disclosures. He's been in the Navy. He is in the Naval Reserve now. I forget what year he started in the Navy, like 2005 maybe. And he's still in the Navy. He's a lieutenant commander. Well, that's no doubt involving many naval secrets. As Tyler mentioned, the whole relationship with the British Admiralty and Serco, and we now know that Serco has many billions of dollars of Navy contracts, including the that's British Aerospace has the contract to handle all inventory control for our U.S. Navy, a British company. I mean, we have been so sold. I mean, when you have the inventory list for a whole Navy, you know exactly what they're going to do.
There ought to be a ninth secret society at Yale called the Pilgrims. And let's remember Vanguard and I think State Street. Does BlackRock also use a ship? In other words, they're telling us they're economic pirates. And
Yeah,
basically, if you have a ship in your logo, it says we go way, way back to when the American Revolution was never won. And then when you
right.
look under Coots, it says we funded the British against the Americans. And then when you look and you see that it was also a Rothschild and his broker who also were part of that. And then you see, oh, wait a second.
Montefiore.
Montefiore, my favorite guy. No one ever, Moses Montefiore, no one ever says Rothschild and Montefiore. No, Italian. What do I always say? Banking came from Venice and it was turned evil there. And anything that's still going on now is living in the shadow of that Venetian usury system. And it is inherently evil because they allow the bank to do what no person can do and then
Right.
doesn't hold the bank responsible as they would hold a person responsible. Banks kill millions of people. This is a fact. Look in history. Why would we ever give banks any extraordinary authority to do fractional banking where they don't even have to have any money in the bank? You give them your money, they invest it. When you come to get it, they don't have it. And they have to ask the Fed now for overnight repos to give you any money, and they get mad at you when you ask for anything over a little bit of money. Give me $2,000. What are you using it for? No, right here it says to me, I'm supposed to ask you everything as if you are a terrorist and you're taking this to offshore accounts, and I need to know. I might not give it to you today, the teller says. And you go, why? Because we don't have any money. Last time I went, they didn't have any money.
Well, let me be very clear. We have said for years, just straight up, they're pirates, and they ruled the seas. And this was the British Empire. They are pirates. They stole and pillaged and raped all over the world. And then they got into the slave trade. And then they began to figure out, we don't really have to operate the pirate ships the way we did. We can move into another dimension of pirating. So then became the pirating that we see in the corporate world and the transnational corporations and all of them. They're all pirates, to the point that they want to take over the world. That's their only exit strategy, because the debt has been run up so high. They can never walk back the way things were. They don't have, they're short. They're short everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what we're describing is the long end of the system that they worked to create in the late 1800s, and actually before that. So Ron DeSantis was fresh meat for them. So he was a Yale student. For some reason, they picked him, and from that point forward, he was a kept man. And is he going to tell us this? Is he going to reveal his conflicts of interest? Oh, I mean, the real key for me with him is his continuing association with the Navy. What we know, and Douglas, is you take a solemn secrecy agreement when you go into the military and know these secrets. So that runs totally afoul with the idea that he, as a public official, should be transparent with the secrets that he knows. And so what I think is that the Pilgrims are using his membership as a naval lieutenant commander to make sure that he never tells the British Admiralty secrets ever. And so we're just gonna continue to hear pablum and lies from anybody that's in that kind of position. Not even counting the blackmail.
That is a great point. As long as he's still, even in the reserves, his top secret security clearances, which he would have had to have as a JAG in his position, especially on a ship. So when he, that's the easiest job you can get, by the way, in the military, JAG. That means you went to college, so you have a degree. And the Uniform Code of Military Justice it is not uniform, it is military, and there's no justice. And so what we're dealing with here is basically the representative of the Pilgrim Society. And at this moment, just as you said, the collapse of the Western civilization is taking place. All of the mechanisms, all of the institutions that have been around for a long time are doing one of two things. They're either ensconcing themselves in even more subversive activity, which, like the Vatican or the monarchy or the Anglican Church or different government isms.
Well, like this game they're playing in Ukraine.
Sure. Oh yeah, that war is
total British game.
And who will be? It'll probably be Coots who will be funding the British, who gave them the money because they didn't want to take it out of their treasury. And what happens then? Well, of course, then Prince Charles is going to get his piece of the pie of the corruption in Ukraine. Don't get me started on Ukraine. Anyway, so the point is that these people have a plan, but the plan is not working. Imagine Nero playing his violin as Rome burned. What did all of the senators do? They grabbed all of the portable wealth that they could and got out of town. That's what all of them are doing. That's why the other day they actually tried to have a Bilderberger Society meeting. The Bilderbergers have not been in control of anything for a long, long time. That's like saying the Trilateralists met. Okay, that's like saying the Bohemian Grove people, or somebody who has the secret knowledge about the Bohemian Grove. It wasn't secret. Anyone could get into those. They have people who take films of them. It's nothing hidden. They have pictures of Bush there. They have a conversation with Bush with the owl and the burning thing and the Moloch in the background. Okay, who cares? The World Economic Forum is bankrupt with ideas. I don't think they're going to get their reset. Because why? Nobody's going for the war in Ukraine, though the British have came out with the greatest propaganda that literally is like Mad Magazine. They literally said the other day, every single magazine, every single station in Britain said the following: Putin was going to drop nuclear bombs all around the island of England, and then tsunamis coming from all directions are going to come up and wipe out every person in Britain. Therefore, we have to start World War III in Ukraine. This is the insanity that the Brits have been doing and getting away with for a long, long time. And we have in DeSantis one of those people who's trying to grab his power. He has been groomed by the Pilgrims, make no mistake about it. He is an economic pirate. He does have the information that he cannot give out because he is still sworn to top secret contracts that say they will put you in jail for the rest of your life and charge you literally sometimes, ones I signed, $5 million. And I forget, 100 years in prison, I think one of them was. 5 million and 100 years in prison was one. I signed 20 of those, 20 different levels.
Really? Wow.
He signed many levels. So as you say, he is still bound by that. He's still bound by his oath to the St. Elmo Society.
Wait. If he was in the Navy, he may have taken his oath of taking the oath to the Queen because of the research you did of the USS Augusta with Truman giving away our sovereignty to King George VI.
Right.
The Navy's not under our control. So if he's in the Navy, who is he giving his allegiance to? Is it to another country?
The Knights of Malta.
Ron DeSantis, if he is not stepping up and disclosing this information, we can just assume he is a traitor to our country.
Well, there've been so many traitors. He probably thought he would get away with it, just like all of them have. And now us peons in the marketplace have finally figured out their game. And let me give you a couple of examples. This is one he could probably talk about. While he was a congressman, he was on the House Subcommittee on Intellectual Property and Patents. Well, being on that committee, he was in an ideal position to scream from the rafters that the British Serco company was running the U.S. Patent Office, and therefore every invention that was submitted to the American Patent Office was being sent to Britain. He could have said that. He said nothing. So therefore, that alone, if he didn't know, he had no business even being a congressman. If he did know and said nothing, he's committing treason, because look at all the wealth that he has allowed to be stolen and given to these oligarchs so that they can continue this weaponization of everything that moves under the sun. That's one thing. And then also, while he was in the Navy, his ultimate boss was Admiral Giustani. It's hard to say his name. Well, as it turns out, as soon as Giustani left his post as vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all dressed up in his little white uniform, he goes and immediately becomes a director of Kinetic in England. I mean, he carried how many secrets to the British, and clearly the Admiralty is running our Navy, and he knew it. And so he decided, well, I'll just get on the game and go get paid for being a director over there. Now, DeSantis, did he know it? I don't know. But since it's become known and it's public record in England that that Giustani, Admiral Giustani, was on that board, then once DeSantis has knowledge of that, he has a sworn duty to disclose that to the American people. Has he done that yet? No.
Well, if he took allegiance to the Queen, he has only allegiance to the Queen. And this is a total takeover of America by the Brits. We're seeing the final stages. But I want to ask something, Mike, that's technical. I feel that there are problems that they're not able to roll out the central digital currency as fast as they would like to. There is some, Powell came out and said that they're looking at this maybe by February 2023. And then Douglas, who is also an astrologer, gives a heads up that May 2023 is quite an explosive month. So even before we heard Powell say this, we thought, well, maybe May is the month that they try to do it and it fails. My question to you, Michael, is logistically, they're looking at a nightmare of trying to roll out this kind of technology on every person here all around the world. I mean, and then Douglas, could you speak a little bit, please, about the astrology in May?
Well,
Yes.
okay, I know nothing about the
I know,
astrology
and
part,
I
but
know you're not into astrology and all that. We'll take
And
you out of
remember,
the
I'm an
screen.
astronomer and I'm a sidereal astrologer, which means
Forgot.
I don't look at the planets per se the way that you'd read it in a newspaper. I look at it very technically, and you can do very careful analysis of this stuff. And so we looked. Tyla and her group said, her team said, "Look at this. Okay, when's it going to happen? We are ready. It's obvious. Everything's collapsing, as we just said. Everything's just fraying at the edges. When's it going to happen? We want to know the date." And I said, "Oh, you're not going to make me look at every single aspect for the rest of this year and next year, because we know that the World Economic Forum says the reset is next year." And I believed them. So I looked and looked and looked and looked and looked. There's only minor Jupiter negative aspects, no outer planets, just Jupiter. And even then, it isn't Jupiter Mars. So what we have here is just a Jupiter event in May throughout the entire month of May, because the aspect will go forward and backwards across Jupiter in a conjunction. So what happens here? It means that they're going to try something. They're really, really going to try.
let me tell
I
you
doubt
why
that
it's going to
gonna happen.
fail. Let me tell you
Oh,
why it's
wait,
going to fail.
but first you have to hear my joke. My children used to say, "Dad could have some money." And I thought about it, and it was wrong when my parents said money doesn't grow on trees, because now fiat money does grow on trees, but Bitcoin money does grow on hash trees. You're the only
Okay.
person who's going to laugh at that joke because you understood it. Thank
Okay.
you.
So, Tyler, what's your question again? I lost it.
Well, I just see a technologically
Yeah.
logistic
Okay.
nightmare, because how am I going to get this central bank digital currency? Some people say that they're going to say that the banks are bankrupt, it's all collapsed. So FDIC can't cover your money, so we're going to change your fiat currency into these digital coins, and you can spend them. Okay, so how do you get them to me? Are they going to be on
Okay.
a card? Is it going to be on my phone? How do you
Okay.
change the whole thing? And then all these moving parts.
Well, you've just defined why this is not going to work. Because anything to do with engineering needs an amazing amount of testing, and you've got to test with a stable system. And the problem with anything technological is it is very difficult to get a stable system. I mean, look at something like the telephone system. It's been around for 100 years, and look how often it goes down. Now we've got technology on top of that, and every engineer I have ever talked to said all these predictions are a joke, because A, you never know what you find when you test a system, and B, the system is constantly moving on you. So you've got new features introduced on this platform, on that platform, you've got new features of hardware, of software. You've got users who are boneheads. You've got people who drop their phone and it cracks. You've got people who spill coffee on the keyboard. I mean, have you ever had a problem with your computer, Douglas?
Always.
Okay. Well, how about your phone? I mean,
I can't even work.
my son's phone hasn't been working for the last 2 days, and I don't even know why.
But this is a good opportunity when it crashes. And I say this to everyone out there, forget these central bank digital coins, just forget it. Get yourself those real, legal, constitutional, small denomination silver coins, dimes and quarters, and start locally, not bartering, but buying things with constitutional money. And we'll just overwhelm the system, because I'm not going to go without buying power and consumer power, but I can't do it with their petrodollar, and I certainly don't trust their digital coins. And everybody sees the writing on the wall with cryptocurrencies. If your grids go down, how are you going to get access to your crypto coins? I mean, duh.
Exactly.
So the only thing left for us is money that's already in circulation. It's just that you might have to go to a coin shop to buy a bag of these coins. So you can go down to the farmer's market and buy a dozen eggs for a dime. We'll have to go back to the 1930s, where the prices were more closer resemble the value of the silver. but it can be done and we can do it. But all the people, all of us have to do something about it. So I encourage everybody to get those silver coins.
You're right, Tyler.
Exactly.
Minted coins by the United States government can be, through an act of Congress, made to be any value the Congress says it is. So if they want to make an old silver dime worth $1,000, it's $1,000.
Well,
Now,
the marketplace would determine that.
correct.
Because if the dime has 90% silver in it, then the value of silver can buy a lot more than what the suppressed price of silver right now can buy, which, let me remind you, would be a great time to buy some of those American and silver and gold eagles if you have some extra money at the end of the month.
And don't believe that the old formula, when the stock market goes down, gold and silver go up. Notice that hasn't been true anymore. And notice that they're buying short on silver from the big banks. I mean, it's like Jamie Dimon. Whatever Jamie Dimon says, do the opposite. Whatever Soros says, do the opposite. And so what I'm going to say to you right now is very plain and clear. In our truth history, we are dropping weapons of mass intelligence. And when these hit your brain, it should explode it, and you should get probably very angry as you wake up to what's been happening. But we have yet to be
That's
proven
true.
wrong in any single prophecy or future prognostication. And here's my prognostication, and I didn't even make it up. The most insider person in politics I know told me a long time ago, oh, don't worry, those electoral votes aren't going to mean anything. Pence should have been able to win the election for Trump by simply insisting that the electoral votes, which were alternative, came into the government, to the federal, the National Archive, should have been sent back. Then it's under contest. Then it's contested. Pence
Right.
alone should have contested the election.
Right. He
This
should have.
person knew ahead of time Trump was going to lose. And I'm going, well, I don't know. I know it's going to be contested, but I don't know what's going to happen. He said, no, he's going to lose. Not only that, but Trump is going to be supplanted by DeSantis.
Oh, really?
Yes, he told me a long time ago. And why? Because he's been groomed by the very people. And right now, in his current campaign, all of Trump's friends are donating multi-millions to DeSantis to make sure he wins that, because he wants to move from being a current governor to being the president when Trump craps out. And what's happening with Trump? Well, they don't know what's happening with Trump. Trump has always been the wild card. He has not been a groomed pilgrim like DeSantis is a groomed pilgrim. DeSantis is perfectly groomed, and he's an idiot. He'll do what he's told, and they may have some dirt on him and what happened with his sister and all of this, and the millionaires pocketing him his money. He's surely got offshore accounts already. He's already been selected, because truth history tells you there are no elections since 1979 when Jimmy Carter and Mark Malloch Brown created OPTEC, and that has determined the rulers of 17 different nations since then. So there was a selection process. So Trump was selected by the people in power. We now know that. We didn't know it at the time. DeSantis has already been selected. That is a prediction, and I'm going to go on it.
Sure looks like that.
Somebody else's prediction, and I'm going to say, I think they're right. Now, notice I qualified that. I think they're right. I haven't looked at DeSantis's information or anything like that. I don't do that unless I'm asked to do it. But with him, from the moment that he started crowing like a rooster, that he was the hero, exactly as Andrew Torba and Torbology, like a rooster crow that they are the salvation. As soon as someone does that, you know that they are being manipulated, and all they're doing is reading the narrative. So thank you for bringing the truth on DeSantis, and don't be like all those people in the conversation that after we just posted the information about him, who say, don't do this to us. He's the only choice we have. Oh, here's what I'm going to say to you. If it's a choice between two evils, whatever choice is still evil.
And it's a big world. So multiple choices. As always, that's why we have to trust in God to bring us to the truth. And obviously, we have been so lied to that if you would draw a conclusion from what we now see from his background, that he's the only choice, then that is the result of brainwashing. So we need to wake up.